Hello, I'm Yvette Owens of Destiny Speak. Welcome to Let's Get It Done. What is that about? We're going to talk about how every project you have can be managed with efficiency and effectiveness. Everything we have and everything we do as a project, we just don't necessarily think of it that way. So, we want to give you the tools to equip you so that you can make your project successful, get the right people engaged, and know how to manage them appropriately. So, when we talk about the key components of project management or let's get it done, that means it includes positive attitude, making sure you're collaborating with the right folks, effective time management, and planning. You also need to have the right project resources. So, with those skills of making sure you're coming to the project with a positive attitude, making sure you're going to manage it timely, you need the right resources in place to make sure those resources and you can get everything done. Because as the person who has to get it done, you don't have to be the only one doing it. So remember that. Get folks to help you. Do not try to be that lone soldier, that lone ranger out there getting something done. Employ people, get volunteers to help you. So there are key resources to a project. There is the project sponsor. That's the person who actually has the checkbook. Who's going to sign off? Who's going to write? Who's going to fund the project? And when I talk about a project, it can be from vacation planning, it can be from planning a course, it can be from planning a program or a service for some youth or some elderly. It can plan an activity for your employees. It can even be planning a transition in your business from one place to the other. If you're going to now expand your business, then how will you really move people forward? So make sure you have that project sponsor in place. Key stakeholders are important. So, what is a key stakeholder? There are key people in the organization or going to be affected by what you're doing that you need to make sure that they have buy in. And for those key stakeholders who you don't have buy in for, it's good to know who they are too, because then at least you know what you're working against. And really, that's nothing to shy away from because a lot of times those who are not really readily on board with what you're trying to do, they bring value to what you're doing. They at least bring those perspectives that you might not be having at that time because you right now are so gung ho and thinking this is really going to work, and it will, but it's good to have that perspective of those key stakeholders who may not really appreciate or who are bringing another perspective. So don't shy away from key stakeholders who might have a little more negative tone or who bring some other, might bring even some opposition to what you're planning. Consider what they're saying, digest it, and then figure out how you can turn it around to make it work for your project. So you have the sponsor, the person who's buying, who's paying for it, who's writing the check, who's the ultimate decision maker, and you have key stakeholders. You have an implementation lead. So that's somebody who's going to really help you make sure that things get put in place. That person is going to be your go to person. That person is going to make sure they're rallying around and rallying the other resources that you need. Because again, it takes a whole team to make a project. From a family going on to vacation, mom and dad planning, dad has his responsibility, the kids have their responsibilities, mom has hers. To a major corporation where you have the sponsor who could be the vice president of the organization, then you have the controllers and the treasurers who have responsibilities, as well as those what we call subject matter experts, those people who really know the work that's being impacted. Make sure they're all involved. You cannot do it alone. You also need technical support. So that technical support, we live in a world that's technology savvy. Today, you cannot do much without technology. Make sure you have people around you who really know how to work the technology, who know how to work it to your advantage as you're doing a project. So we have our how we're approaching it. Now we have our resources. We need to talk about what's in scope and what's out of scope. In scope is anything that you really want to make sure is going to happen with this project when you're getting it done. Out of scope are things that should have really nothing to do with it, or it could be slightly related or somewhat related, but it's not needed for this effort. So in scope are those areas that are under consideration for the change. Out of scope, whether they're related or not, but if they are not directly impacted, you want to manage that closely and make sure you're keeping those things that are out of scope, out of the way of your resources, out of the way of your project. And only keep those things that are in scope in mind and in the forefront of people. And you as the project leader, or you as the project manager, or you as the program manager, and the only difference in those is just the size of the effort. Your responsibility is to make sure you're keeping everybody focused on what's important. Focus on the main thing. Keep the main thing the main thing. Okay, so we talk about scope, in scope and out of scope. What are your project objectives? So what are you working for? What are you trying to do? Project objectives should be defined. They should be able to be quantified. What are you trying to accomplish? They should be strong objectives. We have a tendency to see so many things that are needed, but sometimes they really aren't needed. Remember, keep your main thing the main thing. What's in scope? Anything else is out of scope. And then what are your objectives to that scope? What are you trying to really accomplish? What's the end goal? What's the end result? What's your target? That's where you build your objectives around. Make sure they're quantifiable and they are relevant. Examples are 80% increase in my sales, 20% increase in my membership over the next quarter, 10% increase in my knowledge on an X subject. They are examples of how you would quantify or state an objective. All right, so we're rocking and rolling. You're getting it done. And you're getting it done with a method and a methodology and a method and a technique that will help you to keep on track. Because we have so many things to do, we really want to be efficient and effective at doing that. And I want to encourage you, don't run from it. Again, rally those people around you that can help you with this and keep the main thing the main thing, what's in scope, and be very specific, very quantifiable about what your objectives are. There are some kind of project constraints, if you will. Those things, those borders, those boundaries that you want to keep in mind and keep your team in mind. It could include time, it can include risks that you do want to take or you don't want to take. There could be budget, there could be quality. There's a certain quality that you want to produce your project with. And so you want to keep that in front of your team so they make sure that they remember that and they don't sway from that. There is a schedule. So we talk about time management, and you want to make sure from your constraints, it's project scope, the budget, the schedule, the quality, and the risk. Okay, let's take a few minutes and just drop back a little bit and take a real life example of a project. I have been working with some artists and they've been producing a CD. And so in doing that, we had to make sure we knew who the producers were going to be, who the musicians were going to be. We needed to make sure we knew who was going to do the graphic arts, who was going to do for the CD cover. We needed to make sure who was going to do the videos. So when we talk about the resources, we pulled all those resources together. The project is to produce this CD in a quality that would be picked up and be able to use by radio stations, even film or television, to make sure that people knew that they were buying a quality project. So we got all the right people together. We talked about that sponsor. There's an executive producer, that person who's going to pay and sign all the checks for everything. And a lot of people are trying to go after those CDs because a lot of people have giftings inside of them and they should get them out. But really count the cost and know what you're doing. So we put together a project plan. In doing that, we have the executive producer who we know is going to write that project, write off on the checks and sign the checks. We also have people who are graphic artists who are going to do the cover, and they're going to build the website and the Facebook page, because remember, we have all those technical support we need, and we want to market this and brand that CD so people really connect. And then there's the YouTube pages also. So you want to make sure those people, that music is getting released there, and that's money also. So you have people doing the research to figure out how we can make the most out of this effort, not only to reach the souls or the folks who this music is going to minister to, or the folks who this music is going to really speak to, but you also need those people who are going to help you brand it, help you market it. Also, you need the artists, so you have to gather the artists who are going to and work their time schedules, because remember, we talked about some of those constraints being budget, quality, time and schedule, the risk. And so you put all that together, and we have folks across different state lines coming together to do this project. So it required a lot of coordination. Remember, one of those things that we talked about at the top, you need to come in with a positive attitude, because just because someone can't make a schedule that you put together, you need to be able to come and say, okay, what's the right date that we can all get together? Because it can be frustrating when you're trying to get many people together to do a project and everybody has different schedules. But you have to learn not to let that get you frustrated and figure out, just know there is a day and there is a time when everyone can come together, and that you assume that people are not trying to put you off and not trying to keep you at bay, but they are really just busy folks trying to help you in this effort. Project, get that CD out. Resources, musicians, executive producer, graphic art or videographies, photographers, artists, right? And then there's the distribution companies. So again, one of those constraints being scheduling. You want to figure out how long does that distribution company need to produce that CD, right? And so you back your timeline out. So if I want to produce a Christmas CD and I want it in the marketplace by November, then I need to know how far, and my distribution company needs 10 days to get that CD to me in my hands, then I'm going to walk that timeline back. How long does my producer need? How long does the mixing company need? How long does the mastering company need? How long will it take us to perfect those songs in the studio? Get it? So getting it done is really mapping out all those key things. So what we're going to talk about next is the timeline has phases and milestones, activities and tasks. Phases are made up of milestones and activities. Activities are made up of tasks. Task is the lowest common denominator, if you will. So a task might mean sing the song, right? An activity may mean we're in the studio at X period of time. A milestone may be all of the vocals are laid down for that project. Another example, if you're producing a book and you want to produce that book and you want to release it in September, when do I need to get it to the publisher? When do I need to have my graphics for my front cover done? When does the editing need to be done? When does the first draft need to be, or my written components need to be placed into the editor? All those would be milestones. A task would be, or activities. A task would be, I've got to write it, right? I've got to reread it, or I've got to edit it. So I'm just trying to give you a feel for how you get it done, how you map out all the things. And I cannot stress enough, in the beginning of a project, plan, plan, plan. Planning is the best thing, and if you can take the time, and I'm saying you must take the time to plan up front, Because when you plan up front, then it's just execution after that and adjusting the plan. Don't start and plan as you go, because you will surely not meet your timeline. You will miss things, and the quality will be drastically sacrificed. And you're going to run into so many risks. The whole purpose of planning up front is so you map all that out. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but at least you have a roadmap that you're going to. All right, we're rocking and rolling. So I started talking about that project plan. That project plan is going to be made up of all of your milestones and your activities and your tasks. And a milestone might be, again, we've completed all the studio work. Activities within that milestone are the vocals have been laid, all the instrumentation has been laid, the mixing has, all the tracks have been aligned and are appropriate so we can take it to the mixer. Again, if I'm doing a book, a milestone might be my written draft is done, the editing is done, the publication is done. Get it? There's those milestones are those big, huge chunks of work. Activities are things that we do, groups of tasks that we do within a milestone, and tasks are the individual things that we have to do within an activity. I hope you guys get that. It can be complicated, and we don't often think of what we do that way, but really when you do, then it helps you better organize what you're getting done. So that's the project plan. Let's move on. Every project, you have various folks who are going to want to receive some reporting. And again, this is really from the smallest project, it may be just everyone who's working on that project. They really want to know how we're doing. Are we on schedule? You know, it really helps to motivate people to keep going. It really helps to motivate people to know that, hey, we're really accomplishing something and we're not just spinning our wheels. So let's talk about project reporting in a little more depth, especially when it comes to larger projects. Okay, so we started to talk about project reporting. And I mentioned the smaller efforts where you just want to make sure your team and the people who are engaged, the people who have invested their time and their talents in what you're doing, know that you guys are on schedule and you're going to really reach your target and your goal, what you're doing. People don't want to put their effort into something and just feel like it was for waste, right? Or, man, this is never going to happen. People don't want to spend their time doing that, but they will give their all to you when they know that they're doing something that really is going to happen. When you're in a larger setting, especially in larger businesses or larger ministries, and you have projects, there are people more than likely above or outside of the project team that really need to know, because they more than likely are the project sponsors, those who are paying for the project, those who are really making the final decisions. So we need to talk about what reporting looks like to them. We often need to share with them and remind them what's the scope, because they're not intimately involved in the project like you are. And so you want to make sure that you keep in front of them, here's what we signed up to do, here's what you agreed that we should do, and just keep that scope in place. Because often a lot of the out of scope items come from people who can make that final decision, because they see the great work that you're doing, and what they'll say is, oh, well, can you do this? And can you do that? Because it's related to the same topic. And if you let that happen and you don't closely manage that scope, before you know it, you're going to be over budget, you're going to be out of time, and the quality is going to be sacrificed, and you're going to have great risk. So you need to keep in front of your decision makers and the people who are spending the money. Here's what we're doing. Remember, this is what we signed up for. Here's the scope of the project. Keep in front of them the objectives. So here's what we said. When we accomplish this, this is what's going to happen. The objective is to increase sales. The objective is to increase membership. The objective is to increase productivity. So you want to be able to make sure that they are understanding and reminding them, because honestly, they are busy people too. And again, remember, they're not living your project day in and day out. So you want to make sure you're being able to report to them. An easy way to do that is just always have a report. And they remember, executive type folks like a one pager and they don't like a lot of information. Keep it simple, but keep it substance. That means don't just give them little fluff, give them meat in a very short, compact way. So you want to be able to give them a one page, remind them of the scope, remind them of the objective. You can even remind them of the project members and who's involved. But you want to be able to say, here we're either green light, yellow light, or red light. And it's just what you're thinking. If it's green light, we're good to go, we're on track. If it's yellow light, there might be something that is concerning us or something that's slowing us down, but, and there's a but here, there is no risk to the project. It might be something that's slowing us down. We have to take care of it. We have to address it, but we know we're going to be able to address it and still get back on track. So green light is everything's going, everything's humming. Yellow is we have to just adjust some things and we're just making them aware. Now, just as you're thinking, red light is we have some problems. We have some real issues. The key is when you're having to report to others around your project, you do not want to wait until something turns red to report that. They should have had some inkling that something could potentially become red so that when it goes red, it's not a surprise. Now, can we always prevent that from happening? Absolutely not. But you should do your very best as that project manager or the person who's getting it done to make sure that something is reported yellow before it reports red. I'm hoping this is making sense to you. Green light, it's all good. Yellow, we have some things, but we're taking care of it and we're pretty sure it's going to be okay. And red light is something is just not right in the effort and it could jeopardize one of those constraints. Remember those constraints: scope, quality, schedule, risk. So it could, or the budget. So you want to make sure that if anything is jeopardizing one of those 5 constraints, that you are definitely keeping the decision makers, those key stakeholders, those sponsors informed as to what's happening there. And don't be afraid to report the red. Don't be afraid to report the issues, because that shows them that you're not just giving them fluff, you're not hiding anything from them, but you're keeping them informed and you're letting them be a part of the project because that is their role. The sponsors and those decision makers and those key stakeholders, they are responsible for helping you and the team to overcome hurdles and obstacles that might get in your way. And oftentimes, if something gets in the red, you will need their help to overcome it. So sometimes people don't ever want to report anything red because people don't know how to receive it. When you're in that planning stage of the project management and when you're setting the scope, when you're defining what the objectives are, when you're defining what this project is we're doing, you need to educate your sponsors and key stakeholders in what could potentially happen, how you're going to report it up. So don't wait until it's time to report before you educate those who are going to receive the report as to how to interpret it and what their role is in helping you overcome issues or things that might come up. So in the very planning stages, figure out how you really want to report out the activities and whom do you want to report it to. And then let them know the process for moving it through. When you have extremely large projects, there could be governance boards that would help you with managing through the reporting and the issues and making decisions. You could have a core working team that then reports to a steering committee. And so that core working team, they would be people closer to the project and the project team. And they may even be some people on the project team, but they might have some leadership role. And then they would report to a steering committee who has even more senior leadership and who also are maybe including your sponsor. And then that steering committee would be reporting to the most senior committee around what is happening on the effort. And remember, if you're in that large organization, there are many projects going on. And there are many things that those leaders, senior leaderships, are judging and balancing. So please make sure that your reporting is crisp, it's clear, and it's truthful. Because no one wants to be surprised because we weren't being very transparent. You can do this. Report.